So we just play out. We're going to be playing off each other the whole time, Michelle. And we have a little system and a slideshow and a slide deck that guides us through that.
Okay. Hey everybody, welcome to our 6th live stream for the STEM Teacher Network. We're so glad you're here joining us tonight. And we're doing something totally different tonight. So I'm just going to start off right with that. I'm super glad that you're here with us or watching this later. What we're trying tonight is we are opening up the broadcast so that we can have some teachers join us and we can have a little more open discussion about some of the topics we'll be looking at tonight. So the first part of our broadcast, we're actually going to, Josh is going to be sharing some ideas and some of the things we've been talking about. And we have a few other folks who've joined us. Some we've expected and some we've just like totally opened this up. So if you are actually with us now on the live stream on YouTube, you can scroll up on our chat and you'll see a link to actually join this Hangout. And I just want to invite you to do that. So it will be recorded, and it's kind of like when you call into a radio show, like what's on YouTube is actually delayed. So if you jump into this live stream, we'll actually have skipped forward a little bit in time, and you should mute your microphone and mute or just turn off YouTube because you'll get feedback. So once you're in the live stream, you can kick out of YouTube, and if you wanted to stay on YouTube, you're welcome to do that, and you can follow along with us. I'm going to take care of a little bit of business before we get started. So welcome to our 6th live stream. The agenda you may have open would be a good idea. There's a couple of just little announcements I want to make you aware of, some cool opportunities that I've been asked to pass along, both related to coding in the classroom. Those opportunities are here in the start of the agenda. The first one's for elementary science teachers, or really any elementary teacher, and it's computer science training. And this is really cool. These are sites all over the state of Michigan. And the first folks to sign up for each of these sites, actually, not only is it free, but they get paid to attend, is my understanding. So if you follow the link, you'll see the site here from My Coding. They got awesome programs going on for all grade levels, but this is specifically for elementary, computer science fundamentals. You can get the flyer and you can register. See, these are all the different sites around the state. And my understanding is that something like $100 stipend for the first, I think it was 25 people who sign up at each of these sites. So jump on this quickly if you have the opportunity to do that and you have an interest in coding with your students. The second opportunity is similar. So you may be aware that there is a new AP course at the high school level, which is more of an introduction to computer science. So the original AP Computer Science was a little bit on the higher end. This is called AP Computer Science Principles. You may also be aware, or maybe not, that the state of Michigan, MDE, Department of Education, has dramatically loosened the requirements for teaching computer science. So now any certified teacher, my understanding is that any certified teacher can teach computer science. But undoubtedly, you don't need to be certified in computer science, you don't need to be a math teacher, whatever. But you would probably want some training. And thankfully, again, there is free training available inside our state. This AP Computer Science Principles training, again, the link is here with all the information you need. This is this summer. It's in Grand Rapids. And again, for those who are accepted to the program, all of your expenses, including your stay at the hotel, JW Marriott, the nicest hotel in Grand Rapids, from what I hear, all of your expenses are paid. So 2 really cool, and it looks like another course here, Computer Science Discoveries for Middle School. So lots of cool stuff here. Check out these resources, especially if you have an interest in coding. Okay, and then what the only other announcement I had was welcoming you to join. I see I'm just gonna introduce who's joined us and give them a chance to just say hello, make sure their mics are working. Forgive me, this is a little bit loosey-goosey because this is like an experiment for us. But of course, Josh is here with us tonight. Josh.
Hey.
Want to say hello?
Hey, Andrew.
How's it going? And we also have Michelle. Now, if I understand correctly, Michelle, you are a teacher at Stockbridge as well as Josh, right? Like you teach at the same district? And you're currently muted. Sorry, I muted you, Michelle. So you can unmute yourself. And there you go.
Okay, better?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, that is true. You are correct.
Awesome. And what do you teach?
I am teaching kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade STEAM at Smith. So this is the first year we had STEAM. It used to be STEM. Josh is still working in a STEM program, so it's a little bit of a challenge for me. I've got that art component wrapped in there.
Awesome. Very cool. Thanks for joining us tonight. And it's going to be really interesting, I think, to hear about the continuity from like early elementary that you're working in, Michelle, to Josh's grade levels, you know, like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. So it'll be really interesting to explore. And forgive me, those of you who joined the live stream, I'm going to be muting and I can't unmute you, but I can mute you. So I will do that from time to time. And now I see 2 other people have joined in with us. Kyle, if you've got a webcam, you can turn it on. But if you want to keep your Calvin Hobbes, that's fine. You want to just briefly introduce yourself and tell us what you teach?
Check. Is the mic coming through?
Yep.
Oh, I do have a webcam, but I'm on a desktop, so currently it's unplugged.
No problem.
I'm a chemistry and physics teacher in just outside of Lansing up here in Michigan. I generally teach 9 through 12. I've been not part of STEM, but I feel physics translates really well to STEM in the classroom. It's thoroughly enjoyable. Right now we're in the middle of a large PBL where my students are designing underwater remotely operated vehicles using parts from Menards. It's really been a lot of fun. And I wanted to thank you again for that GoPro. We're going to put it on a submarine here pretty soon.
That's right. So you sent us, I think we had some videos for you earlier in the Awesome. Thank you. And I'm going to jump over to Kenneth. Kenneth looks like he's getting his webcam set up, which is great. Kenneth, you are on, my friend. You mind briefly saying hello? I just muted you as well. Sorry. So you can unmute yourself.
There we go.
Great. Can hear you good.
All right. I'm the elementary, used to be science teacher. Now we're switching over to elementary STEM specialist in Charlotte. It's DK through 3rd grade. So
awesome.
Trying to switch gears over to the STEM mode, introducing a lot more of the engineering concepts into it. Been working a lot with Rob Stevenson over at the ISD. So
awesome. Cool. And so is this your first year doing a STEM program at Charlotte?
As officially a STEM, I'm also enrolled in STEM education at the University of Iowa.
Okay, yeah.
The last 4 years, it's just been strictly a science encore. This year's the first year as a STEM encore. So
cool.
Still trying to learn the ropes.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you. So we are going to start with kind of like a focus, Josh, on some lessons that you and I have been talking about and exploring that are kind of, there's kind of a theme here, right? The theme is connecting to both our community in which the kids are living, but also like the real challenges that students are going to be facing, both the jobs that they're going to be encountering when they're enter the workforce, and just kind of the issues as informed citizens that they're going to be encountering, and how we can kind of tap into that so that we're, in a sense, looking ahead, right, and looking to the future for them as we're planning out their lessons. And you've identified a few lessons. Do you want to like dive right into those?
Yeah, and then I'll let other people chime in as we're doing this, and they can add their comments as we go through this.
Yeah, and I might add, like, the whole intention of bringing people into the live stream is so that, twofold, really. One was so that we can have a discussion a little later on about maybe brainstorming, that we can just all brainstorm together about ways that you could take the things you're doing in your classroom and even engage your local community more, or engage the technologies that are already a part of the economy, right? And include those for your students, even if they're in kindergarten and 1st grade. That's one aspect. But another is to just add another layer of like interaction here. So I do hope that you feel free to like unmute yourself, make a comment, add a question as Josh is there sharing things. And I might even, do a little bit of like a BS test, like when Josh is sharing something, I might throw out to one of you, like, would this even work in your classroom? Like have you, does this seem reasonable? So that we can kind of have a little check and balance. But Josh, if you want to share your screen, or do you want me to share the slides?
Go ahead and you share the slide, and then I'll talk about it. So as you're getting that ready,
yeah.
One of the things that our district has been so fortunate about, and it sounds like Ken's district's going that way with you said pre-kindergarten through third, so we have our own little pipeline right at our school. Without Michelle introducing all of these skills at such a young age, my job would be really, really different. I was just explaining there's a lesson that I'm going to show today. I can't do this lesson without Michelle introducing some of the things that she's introducing at a young age. And these kids can do a lot at a young age. And I think we got to remind ourselves not to underestimate them. So the overlying theme, I think, right now is that there's a disconnect between what businesses need and what schools are assessing. And when you find out what our state needs, and right now the talent development says that by the year 2024, there's going to be 811,000 jobs available in tech and CTE, then that means that as teachers in districts, we should have pipelines that are allowing kids to go after those careers. So saying that, having Michelle as somebody that's prepping kids in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and then I get them in third, I'm doing the same thing for the high school. So we have a whole pipeline that runs people from kindergarten all the way up into the physics class, all the way up into the underwater robotics, all the way up into the CTE programs at our high school. And we've established a pipeline. Michelle and I and the other teachers get together a few times a year and say, what are 3 or 4 things that we're all going to do? Safety is one of them. We all try to sketch. We all try to have good drawings of our plans. We all try to have management systems so that so we can pull off some of the lessons I'm going to talk about tonight. So the first one, let's talk about the egg one first. Andrew, if you can go to the egg. So here's how this applies to the community. So this is called the egg car crash. When I was a kid, we'd do an egg drop. So this was brought to me by our CTE teacher up at the high school. He does this egg car crash, and what he does is he explains to his students that his mother in some of the cars he drove when he was younger had no seatbelts. And so they test a car crash with an egg in it without a seatbelt. Then they build another model of the car and they allow some kind of constraint. Then the third model they put foam as acting as a airbag. And then the last thing that he does is he starts talking about, he sort of hands the baton over to his students and says, there's autonomous now. There shouldn't even be car crashes. And that's going to be your generation. And so why I wanted to focus on this today is that when you're doing STEM projects in your classroom, and I break this rule enough they can't just be projects. They have to apply to things that are going on right now in our communities and in our state. And I think that they should be directed towards some of the career opportunities that are out there. And if we're using these types of projects in our class and we're addressing some of these things, it's, Andrew, you and I were having a conversation a minute ago before we got on here, that you can always start talking about governance and how to govern and how to vote, how to be a citizen, whether you like this technology or not. A lot of the voting that's going to take place over the next 10, 15 years is going to highly impact every citizen in the United States, because technology is going crazy. There's all sorts of things that kids are going to have to grow up and vote on. And so even the idea of, I was telling my students about autonomous vehicles, they're all like, yeah, that's really cool. And I was like, yeah, so what's going to be the rule when 8 years from now, when is a parent going to be allowed to put their 3-year-old in a car and send them to school? Is that going to be allowed? Am I going to be allowed to send an 8-year-old to practice and then they just get back in the car and they come back home? I mean, there's going to be some laws that are going to go around this. So you can always talk about some of the governing laws that are going to be taking place in STEM education. You can talk about how these types of projects will apply to career opportunities. And so, Andrew, can you show the video real quick? This is what the video looks like of them building and going through the process. of making this car and them testing a few pieces of it. But I think that there's a number of things that have to be put in place. One, I think, and I'm hoping, and it looks like it's happening, that schools are creating a whole pipeline from kindergarten all the way up into careers. And then number two, that they're all working together. But three, that the projects that you're doing in your classroom are impacting some of the needs, in that we can close this disconnect between what we're doing in school, how we're assessing kids in school, and really what the needs are in the careers, in the business opportunities when kids graduate. And so that's just that's one of the lessons.
Yeah, and I might just add, Josh, that where we started in our conversations, you know, like a month ago about tonight, was really that connection to say, like as we look across our community, right, and the industries that are in our community, the people who are in our community, the parents whose children go to our school, where can we make those connections? And what I think you're illustrating is how, like, the connections can be made regardless. Like, you might feel like, well, there's either I don't know who those people are in my community, or I'm in a very, you know, rural area, and so all there is agriculture, although there's tons of connections with agriculture. But I think you've demonstrated, or you're illustrating, like, even if we engage with things like autonomous vehicles, or you know, being an informed citizen, and how you're going to vote about 3D printing and you know, cloning. Just 60 Minutes the other day was about cloning race, or, you know, polo horses, and we can engage those issues. But I think there is tremendous power when you can connect it to individuals in your community, right? And so I do want to touch on a couple of quick things. One is, you know, you've alluded to, Josh, the connection, or your reliance on the early L program, right, to prepare kids, right? So, like, they come in knowing how to use certain things, or they come in, you know, with a certain framework already in place. And so I do want to throw it over to Michelle and just kind of ask you, you know, and you can, you know, unmute, but when you think about, you know, K1, 2, where are you trying to get the kids at by the time they get to Josh, so that, or by the time they get to those higher grade levels, so that they, you know, what do you want them to be able to do, right? So that they're ready to take that next step. How do you think about that?
I think one of the discoveries I made when I first started teaching STEM, so that would have just been last year, this is my second year teaching this program after having taught first grade for many, many years, is the collaboration concept for these little children. Now, you're thinking about kindergartners who have this autonomous way of thinking already. It's just a natural thing for them. They aren't comfortable working with the group. They want to do things by themselves. You know, everybody wants a turn. So one of the things that I really try to focus on at the beginning of the year and consistently throughout the year is that collaboration, understanding, and that when you are working on a project, you're working as a team, and there are roles of the team members. And that can be really challenging for these little kids, because of course they all have that desire to want to be in charge of what that project is. So that is a really important piece for me, is to be constantly aware of that. I'm also thinking about the things that that Josh has told me, and Bob Richards as well. Josh mentioned it earlier, that drawing idea and making a picture of what it is they're thinking of before they start working on a project, and knowing that it's not always going to work when they start putting something together to create that object to do a certain task. It might not work the first time, and to really be thinking about, why isn't it working? What else can you try? Those are things that I'm consistently reinforcing and teaching to the kids. And when you're thinking about the computer too, you know, these kindergartners are coming in, many of them, they're still learning their letters, they're still learning their numbers, and they have to be able to log into this computer in order to get to Google Docs and Google Drawings. Right. And
wow.
Well, yeah. You know, we don't know what the shift key is, and I'm trying to think of ways to make that process even easier for them. But
I'm sorry, could I ask about the collaboration in particular, because that's something that really spans all grade levels, and I'm just kind of curious. I know you said it's your second year doing STEM. Have you hit in on any just little gem strategy that that has been particularly helpful in helping kids work together productively? Because sometimes I've seen high schoolers act like kindergartners when it comes to group work.
I think I found that with this age group, the celebration of when I catch those moments where they have done something truly collaboratively, we have to celebrate it. And it's just a cheer that we do. We could just call it steam power. I just say to the kids, what kind of power? And you can walk through my classroom at any time during the day and the fist pumps go up in the air and you can hear everybody saying steam power. It's just that celebration of catching those moments and making them realize, you guys have done it, and we celebrate that. So for me, that's what I found I have to keep recognizing for them.
I think that's awesome, and just like drawing it out. Sometimes it feels really awkward to, especially I think when you're teaching older grades, to be like, I just noticed that so-and-so and so-and-so did this great thing. Yeah. I want you all to know that I noticed it and it was really awesome. I do think that's powerful at all grade levels.
Absolutely.
Josh, I did want to connect, like I think the electric guitar was that lesson was an example that really illustrated the power of like a personal connection to a real person in your community, and how it not only did it make a lesson more real for kids, but I think it also changed the lesson that you were doing to make it more relevant and engaging. Would you mind sharing a bit about that?
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on another thing too before we do that, is that when you have a district that supports this, and Michelle and I just recently had an opportunity to have our high school STEM people come down and they train our kids. They do activities with our kids. Last year, I was doing activities with Michelle's kids. Like, we're jumping all around. We treat it almost like a sports model. Like in basketball, going through high school, usually the high school athletes help out the younger kids, and they do some interactive things, or they coach them, or they ref them, or so. We try to replicate that same model. And so I wanted to mention that, where Michelle's not on her own island. We try to do a couple things a year where people are, working together, cross grade levels. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was I wish you could see how much that collaboration, how much impact that actually has, because over this year for sure. This is the first year I taught third graders because we had some shifts, but her third grade kids and fourth grade kids that are coming up right now, I don't have to really talk a whole lot about like working together in groups. And I'm going to use a basketball thing. It's like when if your dad or your coach allows you to shoot wrong for like 3 or 4 years, it's really difficult to break that mold. These kids are now growing up with a different type of school. Like, they're growing up where like collaboration is a part of your education. And that is exactly what industry wants. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to talk to industry people, and they are talking like, man, these people need to learn how to work in groups and understand project management and understand how to have responsibilities. And so, we're trying to do that. So yeah, this next lesson, I just had to share some of that, because when a district adopts it, man, it just makes it fantastic.
Josh, that reminds me of just like a total anecdote, totally random, but I think it's kind of a fun illustration. It's a story I always remember from my dad, who was in the National Guard. And one of my pet peeves, I don't know about anybody else, is when you're at a red light and there's a long row of cars and it turns green, and you're waiting for everybody else to go. And then you finally start moving, right? You don't start moving until like 30 seconds after the light turned green, and then you hit another red light, right? So you never even made it through the light. And my dad used to say that they were taught when they were in a caravan that when you're in that line, you focus on the light, and when it turns green, everybody hits the gas at the same time. And when that happens, the entire caravan just starts moving. You don't wait and wait and wait. And what I hear you describing is that same kind of implementation across the school district, right? Whereas to say, these are the priorities. We're going to say K-12 today, we're going to start all the way and just start moving, instead of say, okay, we're going to start a new program and it's going to be middle school, and then each year it's going to progress its way through. And I think that's a powerful way to make change.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So I'm going to share that screen again. So, you want to share that electric guitar example?
Yeah, the electric guitar one sort of, this one started a friend of mine, Steve Ziegenfuss, who lives in Jackson, works at Sealand and Air, which is a company that builds a lot of stuff for the Defense Department. And so they're building underwater robots, they're building drones, they're building all sorts of stuff. But on the side, he builds electric guitars and he builds wooden mountain bikes. And we were talking one day, and I was talking to him about some of the parts of a guitar, and he was going way over my head about electromagnetic induction. And I'm thinking, man, I bet my kids would love to build an electric guitar. You know, I wonder if I can get a pickup and a jack plug for cheap. And instead of doing an electromagnet, which is essentially the same thing in the same science, well, some similar science going on in there, we decided let's build an electric guitar. But the reason why again, this is community a little bit, is that when you have these types of skills that he has, it allows him to have some incredible hobbies. And so I went and had Steve, I just reached out to Steve and I said, hey, Steve, would you make a video for my students and tell them a little bit about what you do and tell them about some of your guitar making and where you work? And so what I'm doing with my class is, it's not just build the electric guitar, but here's an actual guitar maker. Here's what he does for a living. He's a mechanical engineer, and trying to just bridge more than just do the electric guitar, but to make it a little bit more than that. So this is Steve.
I'll play just a little bit of the audio.
Mechanical engineering undergrad, but what I want to talk to you about just a little bit, how I use a lot of science technology in what I do in my spare time, which is actually guitar building and wooden bike manufacturing, some things like that. But yeah, everything about working with wood.
How cool for kids to see like a real person doing this, who lives near to their school, but who also just like looks cool. I just gotta throw that out there. He just like looks like a stud.
Well, you know, one of the funny things that you say, that it's funny that you say that, because the joke was, because he can just do so much, but the joke a couple of years ago was, man, he has a couple of daughters, and the joke was, I hope he doesn't have a son, because how are you going to live up to this dude? He's building crazy stuff for the government, and he's building wooden mountain bikes and stand-up paddle boards and awesome electric guitars. But what's fun though is that he actually is the one that sent me a video of Jack White, who builds an electric guitar in 1 minute. And so now you're pulling in all sorts of other fun things about Michigan, about Jack White being in the White Stripes, and being from Detroit. But a whole lot of other components are taking place, and it's fun. But you can also teach science. And so that's, we build, and if you don't mind playing that electric guitar, and you can see the art in there too. I mean, it was ridiculous what, we always start off with a plan. You got to show your plan before you get the materials. And this is one of the girls' frames guitar, just really cool looking guitars that they were building. And then the end product was they had to play them and hook them up to an amplifier. And then also explain the science behind the electromagnetic induction. And these were 6th graders.
And you brought in like a real guitar amp, right? And they just plugged it right in and were playing.
Yeah, yep. We played it with, and then we actually got a it's called an iRig. You can hook it up to your iPhone and distort. And basically it's now the new foot pedal. It's an app and an iRig and it distorts all the sounds. And I just left it up to them. I gave them a couple sites to go to explain the science behind distorting those vibrations in that sound. So now you're talking about iPad, apps with an iPhone being basically the new foot pedal, instead of having 10 foot pedals down on the ground. So just a lot of fun stuff, but trying to keep it engaging, but also connecting it with real life examples.
So to that end, let's chat with some of our folks who've joined the live stream, and where my mind goes is so tomorrow morning I'm going to go meet with some middle school students, and as I was meeting with their math teacher, we were looking at doing some STEM lessons, but the math teacher, it was really important for him that it connected to the math that he was teaching in his classroom at this time, which happens to be linear equations. And so, my question for those of you who are with us on the live stream, and feel free to just, jump in, is there's a certain freedom that you could just say, oh, we're going to build electric guitars. You know what I'm saying? And that's really cool. And you can connect it to certain math principles. But I guess this is does this pass the sniff test? Is this something you could do with your kids? And if not, why not? You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm feeling this first question. And does anybody feel like taking the bait on that?
Sure, I'll give it a shot.
Go for it. Thanks, Kenneth.
I think for me, where I'm at is I see them on a 4-day rotation, 45 minutes a day, then I don't see them again for 3 weeks for each of the grade levels. So what's that?
I'm sorry. Nope, that was just some feedback. Go right ahead.
I was going to say, so for me, it's just about where they're at versus where I can keep all the groups at. Because by the time I see one group 3 weeks later, they're not going to be on the same concept. So if I'm trying to get the same objective for my end to each one of the groups, and I have 9 sections of first grade, and then they're not always going to be on the same path. So in order to get them on that same objective and then have it aligned to what they're truly doing in their classroom, it just time-wise doesn't line up.
Right, because you can't choose where to align those things in the calendar. Do you feel like you have the freedom to just kind of break from that alignment?
Yeah, I have a pretty good freedom to do kind of what we do, as long as we tie it in and support the overall gen ed classroom.
And you're working at really young grade levels, right? You're saying you were DK through 3?
Yep, DK through 3.
What about others? I mean, so Kenneth has kind of that nice rotation. I think. I mean, I understand there's some limitations on having that big gap, but I was just talking while completely muted. Thank you, Kenneth.
I was pressing every button on my computer.
It didn't work. Well, do I need to repeat myself? I mean, it was pretty obvious what sorry. So I said so many amazing things. I don't know how I could ever duplicate it. We might as well just call it a night, because never to be repeated. No, the basic question was does anyone else feel like they have constraints on what they can do in terms of the projects, either by what their core teachers are saying, or do you feel like you kind of have a lot of freedom?
I can respond if you want.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I feel really blessed that I have the freedom to make some of those decisions myself, for sure. As Josh said, there were a couple things last year. He kind of got me going with some ideas that would help tie in things that he's working on at his level that I could kind of begin building on with my kids. And this year, there's some things that I kind of went in a completely different direction with. I wrote a grant to get some dash robots, knowing that there really wasn't a lot of coding going on in STEM. And once I discovered Scratch Junior, and got the Dash robots in my room, I really was able to dive deeply into the coding program with my kids. And I'm very excited to see, even in the next couple of years, as Josh gets these kids, if there's a way for him to, notice that there are differences in what the kids are bringing to his classroom. So, science and the technology, Google Apps, all of those things are areas where I'm kind of reaching in to develop instruction for my classroom. And I've been given the freedom to, make those decisions on my own and supported and continuing to do that. So that's, I feel very fortunate in that situation for sure.
And Andrew, I'm going to throw something out here too. I know Michelle's background. She's a phenomenal self-contained teacher in kindergarten and in first grade. Was it first grade or just mostly kindergarten?
I did it again. I just muted her right before she talked. Sorry.
What was it, Michelle? Was kindergarten and what? Did you
kindergarten, first and second grade, but mostly first. I've been at that level for a long time. Yeah.
And I see some of the people that are on the bottom of the screen. I'm going to make a crazy guess that all of them have done some type of either a self-contained classroom or they've taught science and so when you get into this, it almost becomes like a liberal arts education in STEM. Like you can't, all of us that are sitting here are trying to implement writing. We're trying to implement, it's not, all right, so it's called STEM, but I think everyone sitting here is doing everything they can to take all this other content, and it's actually liberating. It's like, oh my gosh, we get to take all this other stuff and we get to put it together. We get to break down silos. And I think everyone that's on the bottom of these screens, I don't know all of them, but I guarantee it. I guarantee that STEM teachers are having such a blast because it's like the first time in their life, they're like, we get to put it all together and it actually makes sense. Like, I'm gonna
throw this out there, Josh, because we've got two other people who joined us since the start. So if you don't mind, Jay and Cynthia, I'm just going to ask you to briefly introduce yourself. I gave the reminder before, but just make sure your YouTube feed is like either closed or muted so that we don't get feedback. But you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Just let us know kind of where you teach, what grade level you teach, just so we have a sense. Go ahead, Jay. I cannot hear you, even though you're unmuted. So we'll give you a chance to use the gear to select maybe a different microphone. But Cynthia, let's see if yours audio is working. You're muted now, but you can unmute.
Is that working?
Yep.
Okay. I teach kindergarten through 8th grade, basically STEAM. And now I tell you about the question.
That's all right. Where do you teach at?
Schoolcraft, Michigan, outside of Kalamazoo.
Great. And then I'm kind of curious, what kind of rotation do you teach on? Because you're K-8.
Yeah. Well, my kindergartners are every other day, every other 9 weeks. Mm-hmm. First through 3rd grade are 3 days in a row. I talked them into a 3 day in a row.
Yes, good for you.
That's all I could get, and they're also now every other 9 weeks. 4th grade is all year, 3 days in a row. 5th grade, thank goodness, moved to the middle school, so they're on a 12-week rotation, so we can do robotics for 12 weeks. And then my 7th and 8th graders are a Genius Hour course, 12 weeks.
Wow. Very cool. And Jay, you want to try again, see if your audio is working? No, it's not working, but you can pantomime perhaps for, I don't know if you know sign language. I don't think any of us, you teach 6th grade, sounds like, through 8th grade. Where do you teach? Here you go. Where on the mitten? Okay. All right. Hey, all right. Holland, where? Okay, lip it one more time. Okay, Warren.
Yeah.
All right. We did it. We should do the whole thing this way, Josh. Don't you think? We just like the whole conversation. We charades. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you guys for introducing yourself by any means necessary. I do want to focus in. We got about 20 minutes left in our live stream. I do want to focus in on this question of like engaging with people in our community, and because I do think that's like a really powerful way. So like, that's a really powerful way to bring that into the classroom, bring our kids into those things. I don't know about you guys. I live in West Michigan. I've got all kinds of manufacturing around me, suppliers for the auto industry. I assume that's true all over the state. And I'm curious if anyone has just in there, and you know, Kyle, you too, I know a lot of this is kind of elementary focused, but if anybody has a really cool connection in their community that they've been able to tap into for their school, you know, related to STEM in particular. I know that's kind of asking a lot, but I'm curious if anybody's got something like that that they could share.
I have.
All right.
And actually, this isn't mine. My school did this, and I was not involved. But this year, we formed a collaboration with Walther Farms, which is the potato chip. They supply potatoes for Lay's, and they were choosing a new potato. So the students, they grew 4 different potatoes, and then they actually did taste testing and helped them decide which potato would go to market.
Awesome.
At the end of
the, did they actually? It wasn't just like for show. Like they actually.
They actually added that potato into their
their
rotation or whatever, and the kids were washing the potatoes, you know, and preparing them for everybody to do the taste test, and you know, doing surveys while the taste test is going on. It was really great.
Cool,
Andrew. I got to share this with you because I love that. That is the way school. I think that's the way school should be. I mean, kids should be exposed to at least a project like that a year. It should be. Yesterday, I had an awesome opportunity to meet this guy named Kurt Sutton out of Armada Schools, and I was telling him that we have a late start day once a month, and it's we get about 3 hours, 2.5 hours. And he says this. He says, and my principal was sitting right next to me, which was fantastic. He said, "Why don't you get all of them on a bus, go get a bus driver, and during that 2.5 hours, go out to the community and just go door to door to door to the businesses in the community and say, what are your needs? What are your needs? And then come back. And then the second time you have your late start, everyone get into groups and have your kids see if they can tackle some of those challenges and needs that the community is facing." And I thought, I mean, I know what people are going to say. Some administrators are going to say, "Oh, we have to do all of this to tie that together." No, it isn't. You get on a bus, you go out to the community, you ask people what their needs are, and then you go right back to your classroom and tell your kids, how do we solve this? And so then Matt McCulloch, and I'll post this in the Google. Where are we posting stuff? Google.
Yeah, Google Plus.
Google Plus. Matt McCulloch has an actual. So he overheard this. He comes over and he goes, "Josh, I have a step-by-step sheet. So when you go into a business, you can just walk them right through." And I said, "Well, how did you make that?" And he said, "Because I went to a furniture company that's in our town, and we said, what are some of the challenges you face? And I took those challenges back to my class, and I had my class figure it out." And so he has this whole example of exactly what you're talking about, and that turns into a project-based learning STEM activity. And it's just meaningful.
Why are we making up problems that aren't authentic, right? When there are problems in our community that we could be addressing.
Because it's a big disconnect. I'm not going to go get on a preacher board, but why are we testing? Why are we testing the way that we test?
Oh, don't go there, John. Don't go there.
Oh, it doesn't make any sense to me. We're not. What businesses need and what we're assessing in our classrooms, I think, are pretty far.
It's a big step, right? I mean, it's making a phone call. It's not something teachers are accustomed to doing. There's a whole other world to be reaching out and doing that kind of thing. Jay had a great example. Jay, I wonder if you could pantomime it to me. Maybe I could read your pantomimes. Let's see. Okay, so you have what is that? Solar panels.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, okay, I can read his lips. What he's saying is he has solar panel installers come and visit his classroom, and they're coming later this month, and they're going to do a hands-on demonstration of how the installation works and how solar panels work. Did I get it? What are the chances? What are the chances? Very cool. That's very cool. And I think it illustrates, I mean, because those are like skilled labor jobs, but they're in the high-tech field. We've already heard a few great examples. I want to be sure to give the other examples.
Can I quickly share my screen, Andrew?
Yeah, do it.
I'm going to throw this document out. So this is what Matt sent me today. So here it is. Can everyone see this?
Yep.
Project-based education, strategic partnerships have brought the SCS project-based education to a whole new level. This unique format for partnership is explained in the attachment left, and he just guides you through how to go into your community. He has hook videos, basically a list of how to.
I'm gonna show this because like Cynthia is like taking a picture of her screen or something to.
I'm going to share this.
So you've got to share the link.
No, it's and then the next potato. She just was talking about.
Oh yeah.
But it's our high school business management accounting class help with this one. So yeah, you're right, Andrew. Why are we going out and making anything? The problems are already there.
Right. That's cool. Okay, you got that link, Josh. If you can,
I will. I'll
post that right now. I will be sure to post it to the YouTube feed as well. If you want to post it to our little chat here, that's great. I wanted to give a space for Kenneth or Kyle or Michelle to share any other examples they had in mind of example, of connections to their community. I'm not trying to put you on the spot because I think this is really hard to do.
You can still hear me, Andrew?
Yes. Sorry, Kenneth, you just unmuted. Did you have something you wanted to share?
I was just going to, Michelle can go ahead.
Okay. It's just real quick. Actually, one of our school board members owns a nursery not far from school. And in years past, I've done first grade projects with her. So last year, we had some plants that we grew. I'm not sure even in prior broadcasts that Josh has talked even about the greenhouse that we have in Stockbridge, but she's suggesting that if the kids can design a pot, something that they can paint and put in some seeds that, will grow. She's got some ideas for things that we could grow and then use those as a fundraiser for some of the ideas that teachers have for things they want in their classroom. So we're going to kind of play around with that this year and see what we might be able to accomplish. These conversations that we're having tonight are great. It's giving me some ideas of things that I haven't yet investigated, and I'm really excited about seeing what it will accomplish for us.
Well, it's just what that reminds me of, Michelle, is like the fun being a teacher in a classroom where every year or every few years you've got this just totally new thing that you're doing with a new partnership, and that enthusiasm I think gets bred among the students too, because like when they're making mousetrap cars and they know that their brother who's 15 years older than they are made mousetrap cars, you know what I mean? It kind of like robs the fun of it. But when they're doing a unique project that no one in their family has done before, no one in the school has done before, and the teacher hasn't even done before, I think that really just brings the enthusiasm we're looking for in our STEM classrooms. But it's hard to get those ideas. It's hard, and no one should feel bad for not having them. Kenneth, did you have it's just something that you wanted to share?
Yeah, we team up in my room with Fuel Up to Play 62 with the local Alive there in Charlotte, and we actually do all their starter programs for like their tomatoes, their peppers, and everything. We get them started in the grow carts in our classroom. I usually have my kindergartners and my first graders plant them, and then they actually, once they're mature, they get sent off to Alive where they actually become part of the summer food program.
Very cool. Very cool. I just want to throw out to Josh, and this is kind of that brainstorming piece, because with the example Cynthia shared with Walther Farms, and even that example that Kenneth just shared, where like the project ends, like it's like we engage the kids, they do something, we give it like meaning but then I just feel like one of the things in my conversations with you, Josh, is like you take it to this one more level. Like there's just like one more step where it blows my mind. And I don't want to put that pressure on you, but I'm just like thinking like as I think about just the example of let's just we could look at Kenneth's example, which I think in my mind connects to the Walther Farm potato example, where it's like the students have provided a service to a local company, right? And they're giving meaning to that. And I open this up to anybody, but is there a way then that becomes something bigger and something more, as opposed to, in a sense, like asking a favor of the kids and like, oh, the kids were so cute because they helped us. You know what I mean? Like, is there a next level to that, or does there need to be?
I can say something about that. I think it doesn't happen overnight. I think what happens is that when you start doing that and you start developing those relationships, people start getting some trust in what you're doing, and then they actually do start asking you to step it up a little bit. And a perfect example is when we were building the underwater robots. I mean, started building them with my kids, I don't know, 8, 9 years ago as 4th graders. And then 4 years later, they're going to Palau to search for MIAs, like real stuff, like where actually this past year, they just got repatriated some of the people that they found years ago. And so like, but that only happened because we were doing the competitions, we were doing the stuff, and someone took note. But I look at, so Andrew, I say another thing too. What about the kid who has no idea about germinations? The parent doesn't do anything with gardening. Sometimes I'm okay with just like we've exposed them, and maybe for the rest of their life, they're just going to be diehard gardeners simply because they got exposed to something they never did. So sometimes I'm just okay with that. Or maybe they're going to be the next person working at the nursery, at the local nursery. We see that with what Michelle's saying. I have some of my students that are working up at G Farms right now, and they graduated 2 or 3 years ago, and they're learning, the science behind all the incredible trees and things that they're growing out there at G Farms. But I don't want to, yeah, you said you don't want to put the pressure. I think those things just develop over time. Now we're not going to Palau anymore. Now we're working with the state archaeologists, and we're back at home, and they're looking for this next summer. They're going to be looking for Tuskegee Airmen that went down during practice runs in 1944. But how did that start? It started doing what Kyle's doing underwater robot. Someone's eventually going to grab a hold of his students and offer some opportunities. And I think the more we go out and we ask the community what their needs are, and we explain, we show that our kids can do work, eventually these cool things just start happening.
Yeah, I think you have a number of stories that illustrate that, and I think it's a testament to the power of kind of putting yourself out there and not being afraid to engage your community in the cool things that are happening in your classroom. I mean, Michelle had a kid last year who was 3D printing a part with one of my students and beat the governor in a game. I mean, you think he's never going to forget that the rest of his life? I mean, this kid, I don't know. I think if you're doing stuff, things just happen, and you just don't press it too much, and life sort of just happens. And cool things. But everything that I'm hearing these people are doing, and anyone I run into that's doing anything with STEM and engaging in impactful, meaningful projects, great things are going to happen. They just are. I'm going to throw back to Cynthia. She said she had one more example that she wanted to share, and then we will wrap things up for this evening.
All right. I did a Lego League, first Lego League team for the first year this year, and it was hydrodynamics, working to find a problem to solve. And we settled on the sewer versus septic tank issue, which is huge in Schoolcraft. I had no idea how politically huge it was because I'd only lived there for about 3 years. And so I really had no clue. The town is so hotly divided. I was afraid to put the kids out there, honestly. And their solution was they made this newscast, and from the younger person's point of view, they thought that the sewers should go forth. And finally, the city council would not even talk to us about it, would not even engage the kids at all about it. I tried. But eventually, after we had presented a competition and other people had heard about it, the city council invited us to do our presentation at their council meeting. And now next Tuesday, even though Lego League is long over, we're going to the South County Water and Sewer Association meeting in Scotts, Michigan, because they want us to present there also.
Wow.
So, and I wouldn't have pushed it. It organically, you know, happened. And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't.
Right. I love that. You know, I'm so struck by, you know, I'm a kid who in first grade, I vividly remember trying to figure out how the paper towel dispenser worked. And yet I didn't hear that being an engineer, like I didn't even hear the word engineer, I don't feel like, till I got to college, and it was too late. And I was stuck being a lousy physics major. but like civil engineering, like your kids, Cynthia, like know what civil engineering is because they've been doing it in like K-8. And like how powerful is that exposure for just those, even those few kids who like now all of a sudden see this whole career path, and it gives meaning to their math study in high school, and it gives meaning to their science. Thank you for sharing that example.
Can I ask a question to all these, because we've never had this many folks on at one time. So
as long as everyone can answer it in less than 3 minutes.
I'll make it a quick one. So I think all of them have probably been in an environment that wasn't a STEM classroom. It's probably been like a science or something like that. My question would be, with now in your new space, do you see engagement through the roof, or is it the same as it was in your prior classroom? Student engagement. What is student engagement like now compared to your other space that you were in?
Student engagement's definitely increased.
Yeah, big time. I agree. There's no comparison now compared to before.
How could you ever go back to teaching in a regular classroom where kids aren't so excited just to run into your room?
Yep. I love it. I've made that statement. If they take me out of this, I'm gone. I'm done.
And, you know, maybe we could go so far as to say that like STEM is this wonderful test bed too for project-based learning. And like that's something that the gen ed teachers can be seeing in the STEM classroom and taking into their own. Like, I know we haven't heard much from Kyle, I'm sorry, but you know, I think Kyle's a great example of a core science teacher who's really embraced PBL in his classroom. And I know physics teachers, you know, are really leading that charge across high schools in the state.
Is Kyle the one that built the boat?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Cardboard boats in the school pool.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to wrap things up. First of all, thank you so much to all of you who were brave enough to join us and put your webcams on and share out with this community. And I think it made for a much more a wonderful session, and I really appreciate that. I do want to drive back to the agenda a minute and just highlight a couple final things before we call it a night. First of all, I can't forget this. I almost forgot. The secret word of the day. We need for your sketch credit, the word of the day is, I should whisper it, it is stadium. Stadium, lowercase, the normal stadium. So if you haven't, you can enroll in our course in the PLP to get sketch credit for engaging with the STEM Teacher Network. Today's word is stadium. In the agenda, though, I just want to highlight a couple last things. Of course, we have the slides. We didn't go through all the slides that Josh had prepared, but you can access them here along with links to the videos that he included. And then our old pal Ron Madison made us another video. He was out at McCall. Josh and I actually ran into each other at McCall. I saw a lot of good old friends. Ron was at the Makerspace. And so check it out. Check out Ron's video. Again, follow Ron. He's all over the state doing awesome things. You can follow him on Twitter. And we always appreciate that Ron is sharing the latest and greatest of what's happening in the state. And I also wanted, this was an experiment for us tonight to try bringing people on with our live stream. I think it went really well, but I don't want to sway your opinions. Really appreciate if you would complete the brief survey at the end of the agenda. And that's true if you are watching this as a recording a week from now, 10 years from now, or if you're watching it live. We'd really value that feedback as we continue to refine what these live streams are like. So thank you once again to everybody, and have a wonderful night. We'll see you later.
Thank you.